The Broken Path. The autumn leaves spiraled down around Olivia Reed as she walked through Meridian Park, her portfolio clutched tightly against her chest. At 26, she had established herself as one of the most promising landscape architects in the region, with a vision that blended functionality and natural beauty in a way that made her designs uniquely coveted. Today's presentation to the City Council had gone exceptionally well. Her proposal for the Riverside development had received unanimous approval. She checked her watch, quickening her pace. Julian would be waiting at their spot by now, probably pacing with that endearing, nervous energy that seemed to fuel him. Their 6-month anniversary warranted celebration, especially with her good news and whatever mysterious announcement he had texted about earlier. Julian Blackwood stood by the iron-wrought gazebo, tall and striking in his tailored gray suit that matched the stormy color of his eyes. At 31, he had the confident bearing of someone who had already tasted success but hungered for more. His tech startup, Next Gen Solutions, had recently secured its second round of funding, turning heads in the industry. "There she is," he said, his smile warming as he spotted her. "The future landscape genius of the Pacific Northwest." Olivia laughed, stepping into his embrace. "You're going to jinx me with all that flattery. Impossible." "I only state facts," Julian replied, kissing her softly. "And the fact is, you just landed the biggest project of your career. Word travels fast. I have my sources." He took her hand, leading her to the bench inside the gazebo. "I'm proud of you, Liv." Something in his tone made her pause. There was pride there, yes, but something else, a distance she couldn't quite place. Julian had been increasingly preoccupied lately, often working late into the night, his mind seemingly elsewhere even when they were together. "So, what's this big news you couldn't tell me over the phone?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. Julian's eyes brightened with that intense focus that had first drawn her to him at a charity auction last spring. "Remember that venture capitalist from San Francisco I told you about? Thomas Fletcher? The one you said could change everything for Next Gen? Yes, he's offering full funding for the next 3 years, Liv, full funding." His hands gripped hers tightly. "It's everything we've been working toward." "Julian, that's incredible!" She embraced him, genuinely thrilled. His startup had been his obsession, his dream of creating adaptive learning software that could revolutionize education. "There's more." He pulled back slightly. "Fletcher wants me to relocate to their headquarters." "San Francisco, Liva, the heart of tech innovation." Olivia felt a small flutter of anxiety. "Relocate? For how long?" "Permanently. At least for the foreseeable future." Julian's expression was a mixture of excitement and something that looked almost like apology. "It's the opportunity of a lifetime." "When would you go?" she asked, already calculating how they might manage a long-distance relationship, perhaps eventually her joining him once her current project was complete. "That's the thing. Fletcher wants me there next week. His team is ready to integrate our technology immediately." "Next week?" Olivia blinked. "That's incredibly fast." Julian nodded, his eyes now fixed on the horizon beyond the park. "It is. But in this industry, you don't hesitate when Thomas Fletcher offers you a golden ticket. And us?" The question hung between them like the autumn leaves suspended momentarily in the air before falling. Julian's silence was her first answer, more honest than the words that followed. "I can't ask you to uproot your life, not when you've just secured this project. Your career is taking off here." "You're not asking me anything," Olivia observed quietly. "You've already decided." He didn't deny it. "This is my one shot, Liv. Everything I've worked for. I have to take it." The rest of their conversation blurred into a haze of practical logistics and hollow reassurances. Long-distance relationships could work. They'd visit often. Technology made the world smaller. But beneath the words, Olivia sensed the truth. Julian was already gone, his mind racing forward to San Francisco, to boardrooms and innovation hubs, to a future where she featured only peripherally. 2 weeks later, she stood in her bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, her hands trembling. Julian had left 3 days earlier, already immersed in his new life. Their goodbyes had been strained, marked by promises they both suspected might not be kept. He'd called twice since arriving, brief conversations filled with excited details about his new office, his new team, his new life. When she finally worked up the courage to call him with her news, the call went straight to voicemail. She tried again the next day and the next. On the fourth day, his assistant answered, informing her that Mr. Blackwood was in meetings all day. On the fifth day, she received a text. Things moving incredibly fast here. We'll call when things settle. Hope you're well. By the sixth week, his number had changed. By the eighth week, NextGen had been officially acquired by Fletcher Innovations, with Julian Blackwood announced as Chief Innovation Officer, his smiling face appearing in tech magazines alongside Thomas Fletcher. There was no mention of his past in Portland, no mention of the woman he'd left behind. By the time Olivia discovered she was carrying twins, she had already decided to leave Portland behind. Julian had made his choice, choosing ambition over love. She would make hers, choosing a new beginning for herself and the children growing inside her. The quiet years. Morning light filtered through the coastal fog as Olivia pushed open the windows of her studio office. The salty breeze of Harborview carried the familiar scent of the sea, a constant reminder of why she'd chosen this place to rebuild her life 5 years ago. "Mom, Noah took my dinosaur again!" Ethan's voice echoed up the stairs from the living area below. "Did not. It was mine first," Noah countered, the identical timbre of his voice distinguishable only by the slight lisp he still carried. Olivia smiled despite herself. At 4 years old, her twin boys were bundles of energy, curiosity, and occasional chaos. They had Julian's storm-gray eyes and her chestnut hair, a genetic combination that often drew comments from well-meaning strangers about how handsome they'd be when they grew up. "Boys, remember our sharing rule?" She called down, gathering her design sketches for the Henderson property. 5 minutes each, then switch." A grudging chorus of agreement followed. Olivia checked her watch. They needed to leave for preschool in 20 minutes, and she had a client meeting at 9. The carefully orchestrated ballet of single motherhood was one she'd perfected over the years, but it never became effortless. Reed Landscapes had grown from a desperate idea into a thriving business. What had begun as small residential projects had expanded to include commercial spaces, public parks, and even a recent commission for the town's new community center. Her signature style, sustainable designs that honored the natural topography while creating functional, beautiful spaces, had earned her a reputation that stretched beyond Harborview's modest boundaries. "Breakfast and shoes, boys!" she called, descending the stairs to the cozy living area that doubled as the twins' play space during the day. Their modest home above her studio wasn't large, but the open floor plan and walls of windows made it feel spacious, bringing in views of the harbor that changed with each season. Ethan and Noah scrambled to the kitchen counter, their argument forgotten in the face of blueberry pancakes. Olivia watched them eat, these perfect little humans who had saved her in ways they would never understand. When she'd arrived in Harborview, 7 months pregnant and heartbroken, she'd had nothing but her savings, her portfolio, and a desperate determination to create something stable. "Ms. Reed?" Her assistant Tessa appeared in the doorway connecting the home to the studio. The Coastal Preservation Committee called. "They want to move today's meeting to 11 instead of 2. "That works better, actually. Can you let Mrs. Patel know I'll drop the boys off a bit later for their play date?" Tessa nodded, her gaze lingering on the twins, with the affection she'd developed for them over the 3 years she'd worked for Olivia. "Also, there's something you should see." She held out a tablet open to a business news site. Olivia took it, her breath catching as Julian's face stared back at her from the screen. The headline read, "NextGen Fletcher launches groundbreaking. Environmental initiative, $50 million. Commitment to coastal restoration projects." "They're targeting 5 communities along the Pacific coast for their pilot program," Tessa said quietly. "Harborview is one of them." Olivia set the tablet down, her fingers suddenly cold. "When?" "The article says they're beginning site assessments next month. They're partnering with local firms for implementation." Tessa hesitated. "It's exactly the kind of project we've been positioning ourselves for." 5 years had passed without a word from Julian. 5 years of building a life he knew nothing about, of raising children whose existence he had never acknowledged. 5 years during which his star had continued to rise in the tech world, his innovations in adaptive learning software making him not just wealthy but influential. "Mom, can we wear our matching blue shirts today?" Noah asked, oblivious to the tension suddenly filling the room. Olivia forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Go brush your teeth first." Fate's intersection, the Harborview Community Center buzzed with anticipation. Local business owners, environmental activists, and curious residents had packed the main hall for the presentation of Next Gen Fletcher's Coastal Restoration Initiative. Olivia stood near the back, purposely arriving just before the session began to avoid any preliminary mingling. "Quite the turnout," whispered Tessa, who had insisted on accompanying her despite Olivia's protests that she was perfectly capable of handling the situation professionally. "It's the biggest investment this town has seen in decades," Olivia replied, scanning the room. "Everyone wants a piece of it." The lights dimmed slightly as Mayor Whitaker approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. As you know, Harborview has been selected as one of 5 coastal communities to participate in Next Gen Fletcher's groundbreaking environmental restoration project. This initiative represents not just an investment in our natural resources, but in our community's future." Olivia half listened to the mayor's introduction, her attention fixed on the 3 figures seated on the stage. A woman in a tailored blue suit, likely the project manager mentioned in the briefing materials. An older man with silver hair whom she recognized from photos as Thomas Fletcher himself, and Julian. 5 years had added subtle lines around his eyes and a touch of silver at his temples, but otherwise he looked remarkably unchanged. The same confident posture, the same intense focus as he surveyed the room. He wore success like a well-tailored suit, comfortable and distinguished. "Now, I'd like to introduce the team who will be working closely with our community over the coming months," the mayor continued. "From Next Gen Fletcher, please welcome their founder and CEO, Mr. Thomas Fletcher, Chief Innovation Officer, Mr. Julian Blackwood, and Project Director, Ms. Camilla Reyes." Applause filled the room as the 3 stood. Julian stepped forward to the podium, his voice instantly recognizable to Olivia despite the years. "Thank you, Mayor Whitaker, and thank you, Harborview, for this warm welcome. When we conceived this initiative, we had a simple but ambitious goal: to create a model for environmental restoration that could be replicated in coastal communities across the country." As Julian continued his presentation, outlining the project's scope and vision, Olivia found herself grudgingly impressed. This wasn't just a corporate PR exercise. The technical specifications showed genuine innovation, combining advanced monitoring systems with traditional conservation approaches. Julian spoke with passion about creating sustainable solutions that would last generations, not just offer quick fixes. "That's why we're here in person," he concluded. "We believe in partnership, not parachuting in with pre-made solutions. We'll be working with local experts who understand this ecosystem intimately. Together, we can create something truly transformative." The Q&A session that followed was lively, with local environmental groups pressing for details on monitoring protocols and business owners inquiring about economic impacts. Through it all, Olivia remained silent, observing. Several times she felt Tessa nudge her to ask a question, but she shook her head slightly. Not yet. As the formal presentation concluded and the crowd began to disperse into networking clusters, Olivia considered slipping out unnoticed. But the request for proposals deadline loomed, and Reed Landscapes needed more information if they were going to submit a competitive bid. "Come on," Tessa urged. "This is business, remember? Let's talk to the project director." Reluctantly, Olivia followed Tessa toward the front of the room where Camilla Reyes was speaking with a small group of local contractors. They waited patiently for an opening, Olivia keeping one eye on Julian, who was deep in conversation with the mayor across the room. "Ms. Reyes," Tessa stepped forward when the opportunity presented itself. "I'm Tessa Chen, assistant to Olivia Reed of Reed Landscapes. We're interested in discussing the RFP for the restoration project." Camilla turned, offering a professional smile. "Of course. Reed Landscapes. Your firm was actually on our preliminary research list. Your work on the Miller Point Rehabilitation Project was quite impressive. Thank you, Olivia said, extending her hand. That project had similar challenges to what you're facing with the harbor front. Exactly why we noted your firm, Camilla replied. We're looking for partners who understand the specific erosion issues in this region. Mr. Blackwood was particularly interested in Olivia. The voice came from behind her, and Olivia didn't need to turn to know who it belonged to. She took a breath, composing herself before facing him. Hello, Julian. His expression cycled rapidly through shock, confusion, and something that might have been pleasure before settling into careful neutrality. This is unexpected. You're with Reed Landscapes? I am Reed Landscapes, she replied evenly. I founded the firm 4 years ago. Julian blinked, clearly processing this information. Here in Harborview? I had no idea you'd left Portland. There's a lot you don't know, Olivia said, maintaining eye contact despite the uncomfortable awareness that Tessa and Camilla were witnessing this charged reunion. An awkward silence descended until Camilla cleared her throat. You two know each other? We worked in the same city years ago, Julian said smoothly, his professional mask sliding back into place. Ms. Reed was making a name for herself in landscape architecture when I was starting Next Gen. The deliberate understatement made Olivia's jaw tighten, but she matched his tone. Ancient history. I'm more interested in discussing your current project parameters, particularly the sustainable materials requirements outlined in Section 3 of the RFP. The conversation shifted to technical specifications, but the undercurrent of tension remained. Julian kept glancing at Olivia when he thought she wasn't looking. A crease between his brows suggesting he was trying to reconcile the woman before him with the one he'd left behind. As the discussion wound down, Camilla mentioned, We'll be conducting site assessments all week. Perhaps Reed Landscapes could join us tomorrow at the North Harbor section. Your local expertise would be valuable. Before Olivia could formulate a polite decline, Julian added, I'd be particularly interested in your perspective on the tidal zone issues, Olivia. You always had an eye for the details others missed. The compliment, unexpected and seemingly genuine, caught her off guard. I'll need to check my schedule. I have the twins to consider. Twins? Julian's expression shifted. My sons, Olivia clarified, watching his face carefully. They're 4. Something flickered in Julian's eyes. A quick calculation that she could almost see happening behind those gray irises. 4 years plus pregnancy. His gaze intensified, questions forming that he clearly wasn't prepared to ask in this setting. I see, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. Well, if you can arrange childcare, we'd welcome your input. The project could benefit from your expertise. Olivia nodded, suddenly eager to end the conversation. I'll let you know. Send the details to Tessa, please. As they walked away, Tessa whispered, Did you see his face when you mentioned the boys? He definitely did the math. Let him wonder, Olivia replied, but her heart was racing. The carefully constructed walls between her past and present had just developed their first significant crack, and she wasn't prepared for what might flow through. The next morning, as Olivia dropped the twins at preschool, Noah asked unexpectedly, Mom, when will we meet our dad? The question, coming out of nowhere, stopped her cold. What made you think about that, sweetheart? Ethan answered for his brother. Zach said everyone has a dad, but we don't see ours. Is he invisible? Olivia knelt to their level, looking into those gray eyes so eerily like Julian's. No, he's not invisible. He lives far away and works on making computer programs that help people learn. It was the simple version she'd settled on years ago, neither demonizing Julian nor creating false hopes. The boys usually accepted it without much curiosity. But today Noah pressed further. Does he know about us? The innocent question landed like a stone. Olivia hesitated, torn between protective instinct and her deep commitment to honesty with her children. That's a big question, buddy. Let's talk more after school, okay? As she watched them run off to join their friends, Olivia made her decision. She pulled out her phone and texted Tessa. Set up the site visit with Next Gen Fletcher. It's time to clear the air. Part 4. Unveiled Deceptions. The northern harbor stretched before them, a patchwork of industrial remnants and natural recovery. Julian stood at the edge of the eroded shoreline, listening as the environmental assessment team detailed the challenges of the site. But his attention kept drifting to Olivia, who stood several yards away, pointing out specific concerns to Camilla Reyes. 5 years. 5 years during which he'd built NextGen into an industry leader, revolutionized educational technology, and amassed more wealth than he'd ever imagined possible. 5 years during which Olivia had apparently moved to this small coastal town, established her own successful firm, and raised twins. His twins? The timing aligned perfectly. The boys would have been conceived just before he left for San Francisco. But if that were the case, why hadn't she told him? The Olivia he'd known had been direct, honest to a fault. It made no sense that she would keep something so significant from him unless... Julian absorbed this, trying to picture the boys, to connect with the reality of their existence. Do they know about me? They know the basics. That you live far away. That you work with computers. Olivia hesitated. They asked about you just this morning, actually. It was unexpected. I want to meet them, Julian said immediately. If you'll allow it. Olivia's protective instinct flared visibly. It's not that simple, Julian. They're not a business acquisition you can just claim when it suits you. They're children with feelings, with established lives. I know that, he replied, reining in his impatience. I'm not suggesting I suddenly become dad overnight. But they deserve to know the truth, and I deserve a chance to know them. The project director's voice called from the shore, signaling the end of their break. Olivia checked her watch. Your 5 minutes are up. Olivia, please. I need time to think, she said, already turning back toward the shore. This isn't just about you and me anymore. Julian watched her walk away, feeling as though he'd glimpsed a parallel life, one where he'd made different choices, where he'd been there to witness his son's first steps, first words. The magnitude of what he'd unknowingly lost left him momentarily breathless. That evening, alone in his hotel room, Julian made a call he'd been contemplating since his conversation with Olivia. Vincent speaking. You lied to me. Julian didn't bother with greetings. About Olivia. About the messages she sent. A pause, then a sigh. Julian, I was wondering when this might come up. She was pregnant, Vincent. With my children, twins. Did you know that when you intercepted her calls? Another pause, longer this time. I suspected something significant was happening. The frequency and urgency of her attempts to reach you. But no, I didn't know about a pregnancy specifically. But you deliberately kept us apart, Julian pressed. You lied to me about her moving on. You lied to her by making it impossible to reach me. I made a business decision, Vincent replied, his tone hardening. You were on the verge of the biggest opportunity of your career. Of our careers. You were already wavering, Julian. Already talking about delaying the move to San Francisco. If you'd known about a baby... Babies, Julian corrected sharply. 2 human beings I've never met because of your manipulation. Would NextGen exist as it does today if you'd turned back? Vincent challenged. Would we have revolutionized adaptive learning? Would thousands of children be benefiting from our educational platforms? Sometimes personal sacrifices serve a greater good. Julian's grip tightened on the phone. That wasn't your sacrifice to make. That wasn't your choice. No, Vincent admitted after a moment. It wasn't. For what it's worth, I thought I was doing what was best for the company. For the vision. I trusted you, Julian said quietly. With my business, with my life. And I delivered exactly what you always said you wanted, Vincent countered. Success, impact, legacy. The call ended shortly after, leaving Julian staring at the harbor lights visible from his window. Vincent's betrayal was a professional issue he would deal with later. For now, he had a more immediate priority, finding a way forward with Olivia and the sons he'd never known. Part 5. The Bridge Between Worlds, The coastal breeze carried the scent of salt and pine as Olivia waited on the playground bench, watching the preschool doors. Around her, other parents chatted and checked phones, the normal end-of-day routine that had become so familiar over the past 2 years. But today was different. Today, Julian waited beside her, his normally confident demeanor replaced by an uncharacteristic nervousness. What if they don't like me? he asked quietly, straightening his casual sweater for the third time in as many minutes. Olivia glanced at him, still reconciling this uncertain man with the driven entrepreneur she'd once known. Therefore, Julian, be yourself, don't overcompensate with gifts or promises, and listen when they speak. That's all it takes. After their confrontation at the harbor 3 days earlier, Olivia had done some serious reflection. Her initial instinct had been to protect the careful life she'd built, to keep Julian at arm's length despite his revelations about Vincent's deception. But a longer conversation with Tessa had shifted her perspective. If someone had deliberately kept you from your children, Tessa had pointed out, wouldn't you want the chance to make things right? So here they were, waiting for the twins after agreeing on a carefully structured introduction. Julian would be presented simply as a friend of their mother's first, someone who knew her from before they were born. No expectations, no pressure, just the beginning of a relationship that could evolve naturally over time. The preschool doors burst open, releasing a flood of energetic children. Ethan emerged first, walking deliberately with his backpack neatly positioned, followed by Noah, who bounded out with untied shoelaces and his jacket trailing from one arm. "Mom!" Noah spotted her and ran over, launching himself at her with his customary enthusiasm. "I made a volcano that really exploded. Ms. Henderson said it was the best one." Ethan approached more sedately, his eyes immediately focusing on Julian with undisguised curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked directly. Julian seemed momentarily frozen, staring at the boys with an expression of wonder that made Olivia's chest tighten. She stepped in smoothly. "This is Mr. Blackwood. He's an old friend of mine from Portland before you two were born. He's in town for work and wanted to meet you. Do you like dinosaurs?" Noah asked, turning his attention to Julian with lightning speed. Julian found his voice. "I do, particularly theropods, the meat-eaters with the small arms." "Like T-Rex," Noah exclaimed. "That's my favorite, too." "Triceratops are better," Ethan countered. "They have 3 horns for defense and a frill to protect their neck." "A practical choice." Julian nodded seriously. "Defense is often more sustainable than offense." Ethan studied him with renewed interest. "Do you want to see our park? Mom designed it, and they have a dinosaur fossil in the sandbox that you can dig up." The simple invitation, offered with a child's straightforward logic, seemed to touch Julian deeply. He glanced at Olivia, seeking permission. "That sounds perfect," she said. "We can all go together." The next hour passed in a blur of playground activities, fossil excavation, and increasingly comfortable conversation. Julian followed the boys' lead, answering their rapid-fire questions with a patience Olivia had never seen from him before. When Noah skinned his knee after an ambitious leap from the swing, Julian was there with a tissue from his pocket, offering comfort without overstepping. Watching them interact, Olivia felt something shift inside her. A letting go of anger she hadn't fully acknowledged was still there. Whatever Julian had been 5 years ago, the man before her now was showing genuine care for her sons, their sons. Later, after ice cream and the promise of another visit soon, they stood in the driveway of Olivia's home. The boys had gone inside with Tessa to get ready for bath time. "They're incredible," Julian said softly. "So different from each other, and yet I can see parts of both of us in them." Olivia nodded. "Ethan has your focus, that intensity when something captures his interest. Noah has your creativity, though he expresses it differently." "Thank you," Julian said, meeting her eyes directly. "For today. For raising them so well. For considering a way forward." "I'm still processing everything," Olivia admitted. "The truth about Vincent's interference. What it means for all of us. But the boys deserve to know their father, and you deserve to know them." Julian hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I've been thinking about the next-gen Fletcher project here in Harborview. It's scheduled to last at least 3 years, with quarterly oversight required at minimum." Olivia understood the implication immediately. "You're considering relocating?" "Partially at first, splitting my time between here and San Francisco. Eventually, perhaps more permanently." He ran a hand through his hair. "I've already missed so much, Olivia. I don't want to miss any more if I can help it." The Julian she'd known 5 years ago would never have considered compromising his career trajectory for family. The realization of how much he'd changed, or perhaps how much he'd rediscovered parts of himself that ambition had buried, struck her powerfully. "What about Vincent?" she asked. "Next Gen? Your position there?" "Vincent and I have had several difficult conversations," Julian replied. "I've made it clear that my priorities have shifted. As for Next Gen, technology allows for remote work better than ever before. Thomas is surprisingly supportive. He has grandchildren he rarely sees and considers it one of his few regrets." Olivia absorbed this, cautious, but unable to deny the hope blooming within her. "The boys would benefit from having you in their lives more consistently." "But Julian, this has to be about them, not about us. Not about recapturing something that ended years ago." "I know," he said quietly, "though I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about what might have been. What might still be someday. But you're right. The twins come first." From inside the house came the sound of Noah's laughter, followed by Ethan's more measured voice explaining something with great seriousness. "One step at a time," Olivia said, looking toward the warm light spilling from her windows. "We build the bridge between our worlds carefully, for their sake.